I am totally illiterate. Philosophy is easy. Anyone could do it. Totally illiterate.
Happy Easter, Derrida Reading Group. Happy Easter, happy resurrection. It's exciting day for Christ, exciting day for everyone. I've been joining a lot of Gnostic Discord servers talking to people about Gnosticism because I've become curious about it. And what I've basically decided is that it doesn't make very much sense, but it's very interesting. Much like Christianity, but I don't know. I feel very confident. I have like a good Hegelian Christianity going that just is like Christ happened, Christ happened, Christ happened. You just say that over and over, and you pretty much win every argument that way. But happy Easter. I don't know if y'all were raised in Christian families. I certainly was. Oh, Riki's coming back to help his mom, probably with Easter stuff. No, not really. Okay, not really Christianity. Well, it shows why you're here. You're just that deranged. You know, that's why you're threatening me with this. You're threatening me with this father quotation saying we have to work on this. You actually said obey or die, which I thought was really severe. But I just took it in stride. Let's find this. The father is. We'll start with the.
I just thought it was super cryptic.
No,
I said before, yeah, the father present stuff is okay-ish, and then this passage came up, and I was completely lost.
Yeah, we should definitely talk through it. It gives us also a chance to talk through these often parenthetical sort of. You've got these. It writes itself that the father is not just. We should talk through because it can seem like because we've spent 14 hours or so on this text that we've been going slowly. But one thing that we haven't had the chance to do is sort of slow down, and unpack these alternative branching sentences with the parentheses. And I don't know how I get this to generate. How do I hit? It's like muscle memory or something. But we've got this flap. I think I'm probably the word for this is pli, PLI, which.
Or like fold, or yeah.
Probably. I don't. Yeah, fold would be how you would translate it. Flap is a weird. It could be another word, but Barbara Johnson is not. She could be translated, but flap I think is, to my ears in English, is just idiomatically sounds very strange here. I don't even know what that would mean, a flap. I barely know what a flap is, to be honest with you. But I think that, I guess we'll just wait a second for Riki to come back to talk substantively about, but I don't know, is your family celebrating Christmas? I mean, they're not celebrating Christmas, but are they celebrating Easter?
I mean, today I'm alone. My parents are visiting some relatives, and I wasn't really joining them. Didn't feel like it. So, but yeah, some celebrations going on. I don't know.
Yeah. So are you allowed in your family to be like, I don't want to do this? Because that's the best thing. Because
Yeah.
that's like I was I had a French partner for a long time, and nobody was allowed to not do something. Like if there's going to be an event, you can't. We had to come up with these big excuses for me to not go to the event.
Oh.
Like David's dying or something, and he's just he needs to stay home. So it's no worst thing about family is when all that stuff's mandatory. I feel.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's.
I mean, it was like that at some point, but at this point, not really.
Yeah.
Let me look up the French. I'm curious right now.
Please do. Please do. Oh, I could get it to read the whole text out loud. I want to do that.
And do you have anything planned for Easter still? Or
No, I was just, I was celebrating that we shot down Christ out of the sky. Again. But other than that, I think no, I was gonna look up to see if Heidegger says anything. I was gonna look into the Black Notebooks and see if Heidegger says anything about Easter. Because of course, Heidegger loves gathering shit. And I just that's the gathering Christian holiday. And so I was wondering, of course, Heidegger always is very disavowed Christian, right? He doesn't ever want to be Christian. But and in the Black Notebooks, actually, that's the big thing, much more than Judaism. There's some horrible things he says about Jews, of course, in Jewishness in the Black Notebooks, but he also says way more things about Christians. I was gonna go look at that and see if I could find some Easter stuff. Yeah, so I guess what I'm telling you is my celebration of Easter is reading the Black Notebooks.
okay,
Yeah, I don't
it's
know.
awfully good.
Yeah, it couldn't be bad. I really like the Black Notebooks because they're really a very different genre of writing and very interesting. They're not, they're scandalous in the way that Heidegger is general. There's nothing new really scandally about him. I don't know if I've talked to you about how I have this one part of a Heidegger, the Trackle essay, and this one that I wrote my first article I ever published on it. Just this is, I think, is the worst thing in Heidegger. But the rest of Heidegger is it's just including Black Notebooks is just not as bad as that. So and that's published, has always been published, where basically in this he says, Trackle, who was a World War I nurse, or Tlakun, I just say Trackle because this is American. I'm an American. But he was a World War I nurse, and Heidegger basically says, Heidegger's talking about the blue generation, and he really wants humanity to become blue, and blue in the sense of blue is a tranquility and a sort of non-competitive difference, a non-oppositional difference would be the rule of humanity. And he says in this essay, he's writing on this Trackle poem that Trackle wrote as a World War I nurse about people dying. Heidegger basically says Trackle can't be sad in this poem because Trackle would have been happy to see all these people die because they're the old non-blue generation. And he, like me, Heidegger, would have been welcoming the future blue people. And for the future blue generation, the old generation has to die. So I'm not scandalized by the Black Notebooks because that's he's already said so much, right? And then he goes on to analyze fire and the essence of fire is flame. So you might as well be talking about gas chambers at that point. But I really like the Black Notebooks, and I'm not as upset as people generally are. An avancé, is that the word for a flap? An avancé? Yeah, okay. That's ridiculous that was okay. So, I mean, a flap, wrong. I wouldn't translate that. I don't know. At least as to my, I would want to look up to sort of, let's go through the passage. Just in English, and then we can come back maybe to the word. I don't know if you can see can you see what I'm doing in my notes app?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Okay, Riki, you're back, right? Okay. So
Yeah. Hello.
okay, cool. Okay. Yeah, so now I want to talk about this what is the father is sort of thing, and I think it's a good idea to talk about. So does that, no, that doesn't work. I have to keep it. Okay. That's okay. I keep it. Okay. So I'm happy to just read it, actually. I'm excited to read. Okay. What is the father? We asked earlier. The father is. The father is the son lost. Writing, the lost son, does not answer this question. The question, what is the father? It writes itself that the father is not, that is to say, not present. When it is no longer a spoken word fallen away from the father, writing suspends the question, what is, which is always, tautologically, the question, what is the father? And the reply, the father is what is. At that point, a flap is produced that can no longer be thought about within the familiar opposition of father to son, speech to writing. So what Derrida is doing here basically is a very common gesture that it's worth familiarizing yourself with, which is taking a question and either wrapping it to the ontological question. So the ontological question being, what is, right? TSD. That's what is in Greek. So I'm told. And what is the father? When he says, what is the father is, he's saying there's a tautological, because of the arguments that we've developed, there's a tautological analytic relation between the father and being, such that whenever you're talking about being, you are talking about the father. Okay? So if you're saying is, so we've talked some about the metaphysics of present stuff. If you're still like struggling with that, which I would expect you to be, I still am. I mean, and this is all I've been doing for years, so it's very hard. But the general thought of presence and thought of the general thought of what being is in Greece is that being is determined as presence. This is like the famous Heidegger reading. And when Derrida's unpacking this Pharmakon thing, just as we found that, remember earlier we found like writing is going to exceed opposition as such, like not any individual opposition, but just oppositions generally. Now we're starting to feel like, okay, these father-son metaphors and these like father-bastard metaphors, like orphan versus good son versus bad son metaphors, all of this we're starting to realize is not just going to be like external to metaphysics, like, oh, those were linguistic dialogic things that Plato was doing, right? This is a very common way that I think we've railed against a few times, I've railed against a few times at least, even in this reading group, that, oh, Plato is just fictional. Plato's just these nice little stories, these funny little stories that'll help us learn about philosophy, but the key thing is the concepts. Oh, well, Derrida's always trying to push us. Remember when we saw like metaphor is the contamination of metaphor and the metaphor of contamination or something like that? These metaphors of father, son are going to latch on to being and latch on to ontology in a way that's not psychoanalytic, not biological in any way, not historical in any way. It's going to be prior to all those things. And so ontology is going to be always a question of paternity. Another reason we need ontology if we want some way to displace the father. So I mean, you don't necessarily get rid of the father in ontology, right? You have in Hamlet, right? I am thy father's spirit. Famous example Derrida develops in Spectres of Marx, right? But in general, ontology is and all of deconstruction is an attempt to displace the father. In this, I think I made the joke last time. I'm always telling students like, I hate your dad. That's what I'm saying. And there are no good fathers in this orientation. The father always cancels the future in a certain way. You also can't not have a father, right? You can't come out of nothing. But when we're unfurling this logic of what is the father is, the father and ontology are united. We're trying to point towards something that would give us a way to open the future without reducing it to ontology and without reducing it to paternity. Okay, so I just said a lot sort of abstractly, but was that helpful? / what else might be helpful to talk about here?
I just put also a quote in chat from an earlier section that just reminded me of, he never really came back to it with the good and like bringing onta into logos, or is the good is responsible for that. And he also talks about we predicate it to be of many beautiful things, etc. So there's already this kind of relation to, I guess, what he picks up here. But yeah, I think it's fine actually. I guess just on its own, it kind of stuck out to me. I wasn't really sure where to place it, but I think that's okay. Like this relation to the father, also in general with ontology, I think that's okay. Yeah.
So you just you feel like it's okay, but you feels like it comes out of nowhere, or you don't understand its relation to what surrounds it, or
no, I think it was a bit cryptic to me when I first read it. I'm still parsing this a bit, but I think overall it is okay. It's okay. I'm not super convinced by saying it, but I can't really formulate a good question.
That's okay. I mean, we can keep, so it's kind of I don't know if abstract is the right word, but it's like it's a very general sort of, because literally like what Derrida is saying is that every time that we are speaking in the present or using, and that's more than the present tense, right? It's anytime we're even imagining a present or whatever, we're going to have something like the father there. It's very hard to concretely envision in every case, right? So like so it's a very generalized issue, generalized problem, and it's so like, and it means like also we asked what is the father, and we found a few conditions, remember, for the father. We were like, okay, a father needs to have language, needs to have logos. Why does a father need to have logos? Well, because otherwise nothing would differentiate a father-son relation from a cause-effect relation, was what Derrida said. That the only differentiation we could have is something like logos, something like language. So we've asked about what is the father, and we found conditions, but Derrida's here saying there's kind of a limit in the sense that ontology kind of can't tell us what the father is, because ontology is already a paternal question. How we get there, we can talk about, but the logic of it is just, we can't explain ontology with what ontology is itself. If ontology is a paternity test, we sort of can't, we can't step back and say, what is a paternity test? Then we're saying paternity test, There's kind of a set theory paradox, right? It's like if somebody says, oh, what's a gumpelgus? Well, it's, like a gumpelgus. It's like, we can't. So when he says writing the lost son doesn't answer this question, it doesn't answer what is the father, because this is an ontological question and is already dominated by paternity, basically. So writing suspends. So like writing suspends the question, what is? So like we're bracketing, we're suspending. I say bracketing, I'm so scared to get into Husserl at all anymore. I never want to talk about or read Husserl ever again in my life. But I hope my Husserl professor doesn't see that. No, I enjoy him, I promise. But it suspends the question, what is? Because the question, what is always sort of, I don't know, buggered by, controlled by the father, already paternalized. And then this flap, which is in French is avancé. I think with like folding stuff, you can like say like, oh, there's that can fit. Literally that means advance. Okay. Just like, so Derrida's talking about what he's doing, what cannot be thought about in the opposition, father-son speech to writing. Yeah. But I don't know. Is Riki, is this sounding okay, or just too hard or too easy or too everything? I don't know.
I mean, I somewhat understand, but I don't know what to relate it to, which I don't know if it's a valid thing to say.
No, totally valid thing to say. Yeah. What? Yeah.
No, like I kind of understand the argument of, like in I forgot the word, like ontology, ontology being related to paternity, and I don't know how to speak on.
No, it's okay. It's okay. Yeah, it's all right. So why don't we pin this just like ontology related to paternity and keep, I think it'll come back. And I think it's hard to clarify any more than we have right this moment. Yeah. But
okay, maybe just I'm struggling. Struggling. Sorry.
Yeah. No, I'm struggling too. Yeah. Sorry. No, you're saying something?
I was just, so for me, I guess I have a problem with the what is not completely clear to me is this generalization that
Okay.
So with the father in writing, and specifically how Plato sets it up, right? And how Derrida also discusses it. That I understand. But now this move to all of ontology as paternal via maybe the good. This is a bit too fast for me. Like, I feel like I'm kind of missing some step in between.
Yeah, I think that. Yeah. Sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just like agreeing. And
so I think that's a totally fair place to wonder and to think, and it is something we're going to have to fill in as we go, I think, or as we go back. But so I think what it would be useful to do, I think, here is just we all understand the structure of the argument, at least abstractly. even if we can't relate it, even if we can't demonstrate that jump, and even if we can't relate it to everything we're saying, there's just the level of, we get the structure, it just doesn't feel demonstrated. I think that's okay to be for now. Okay. Yeah. So, I see the jump too, but I'm confident we're gonna be able to fill that in eventually. So as long as we just, it's a good habit to get into with reading Derrida. And I think with reading anybody, it's just saying like, okay, Derrida thinks X, Y, Z, and it seems big. Let's just wait and be open. Let's just not assume that it's true. I'm not saying just trust Derrida, but I'm saying just for the purposes of reading for now, let's just trust that and not trust it completely, fill in things when we see it, but developing the good father presence, speech, logos, this kind of grouping and and opposition, right? So that all big Easter basket of metaphysics eggs, that's Platonism, and writing is going to exceed that somehow and be something other than ontology. We'll just put that in the back of our minds and then move forward. Does that sound good?
Yeah, I think that's good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. All right. So, we're getting to like liquid and cum and stuff. Okay. I've just said it. It's like what Derrida writes about here. No. I think he already. Oh, over a seed scattered. We already got to. Okay, we're good. Okay, we're gonna get to some exciting parts. Okay, who would like to read next? To just is everybody okay with us? Just like we're okay, just soldier. We already said we're okay with it. Sorry, I'm nervous today. I'm kind of out of sorts. But okay, who would like to? I haven't had enough pharmacons or pharmaca. I need more pharmaca. I've got Red Bull, but Red Bull makes me kind of not as calm, weirdly. But would somebody like to read for us here?
I can read.
Thank you.
Great. Also, again, I'm not sure if my mic is being weird again. I look good.
It sounds fine to me.
Okay. The entrance of the Pharmakon on the scene, the evolution of the magic powers, the comparison with painting, the politic of familial violence and perversion, the allusion to makeup, masks, simulacra. All this couldn't not lead us to games and festivals, which can never go without some sort of urgency or outpouring of sperm.
I told you it was coming.
Why?
I just like it's just saying, yeah. I haven't seen the French here, but like I remember I read this and I immediately like posted on Facebook like Derrida says you can't have a party without sperm going everywhere. Okay. Yeah.
Hold on.
So go ahead.
The reader will not be it's blocked. Disappointed, provided he accepts a certain scansion of the text and agrees not to consider as mere rhetorical contingencies the terms of the analogy proposed Socrates.
So we're going to get some cum. He's basically saying, you won't be disappointed if you accept this. It just, sometimes Derrida really is funny. And I really, I always imagine meeting Derrida and saying, imagine if you were as funny as me. But I think he's very funny. Okay, sorry. Go ahead. You've got some fertile seeds to talk about, some engendering.
Here's the analogy. Simulacrum writing is to what it represents. That is, true writing which is true because it is authentic, corresponds to its value, conforms to its essence. It is the writing of truth in the soul of him who possesses the episteme as weak, easily exhausted, superfluous seeds giving rise to the ephemeral produce. To strong, fertile seeds engendering necessary, lasting, nourishing produce. On the one hand,
we have the patient, sensible farmer. On the other, the Sunday gardener, hasty, dabbling, and frivolous. On the one hand, the serious, on the other, the game and the holiday. On the one hand, cultivation, agriculture, knowledge, economy. On the other, art, enjoyment, and unreserved spending.
Okay, and you were you were a great Socrates before. Yeah, but please interpret the character however you want each time. Don't want to commit you to the same version.
But no prejudice. If a sensible farmer had some seeds to look after, I wanted them to bear fruit. But would he just hold on a bit?
Sorry. Is that good?
Oh, yeah. Would he with serious intent plant them during the summer in a garden of Adonis and enjoy watching it produce fine fruit within 8 days? If he did so at all, wouldn't it be in a holiday spirit, just for fun? For serious purposes, wouldn't he behave like a scientific farmer, sow his seeds in suitable soil, and be well content if they came to maturity within 8 months? And are we to maintain that he who has knowledge of what is just, honorable, and good has less sense than the farmer in dealing with his seeds? Then it won't be with serious intent that he will write them in water. An expression equivalent to writing in sun, or in that black fluid we call ink, using his pen to say words, that can't either speak in their own support or teach the truth adequately.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. Yeah. So this is like okay, this is such blockbuster Derrida. I feel like we should eat a big chunk of it or drink a big chunk of it, and then come back and try to synthesize, if that's okay. So and we're gonna get to pederasty soon, which is exciting. So this is a Plato. Okay. It's actually always so competent and scary, the AI stuff now. But okay. Yeah, then I'll read a bit. Okay.
Okay.
And then we can hand off. But you've got it anytime Socrates is talking, for sure. I think we've got to say that. Okay. Sperm, water, ink, paint, perfume, dye. So my ears always perk up whenever there's in philosophy a discussion of makeup or of perfume. And it's very hilarious to me because I think like philosophy always hates makeup and perfume. It's like one of the most, and I read that not just as like an anti-woman thing, but like as an anti-democracy thing, an anti-writing thing. There's something non-present and artificial about dye, about color, about perfume. It's anyway something I've noticed that I learned as a student of Derrida to watch out for. But ink, paint, perfume, dye, the Pharmakon always penetrates like a liquid. It is absorbed, drunk, introduced into the inside, which it first marks with the hardness of the type, soon to invade it and inundate it with its medicine, its brew, its drink, its potion, its poison. Getting excited, so I'm reading too fast. In liquid, opposites are more easily mixed. Liquid is the element of the Pharmakon. And water, pure liquidity, is most easily and dangerously penetrated, then corrupted by the Pharmakon, with which it mixes and immediately unites. Whence, among all the laws governing an agricultural society, comes the one severely protecting water, principally against the Pharmakon. One interesting quasi-historical argument Derrida will make here is that agriculture requires logos, not just paternity, but like the invention of agriculture. And I think we're going to get into that here, if I remember correctly. But here we're talking about water, and we're talking about freedom from contamination and a strong protection against Pharmakon. So water, above all things, is exceptionally necessary for the growth of all garden produce, but is easily corrupted. It is not easy to affect the other contributory causes of the growth of products of the ground. The soil, the sunlight, the winds, by doctoring, pharmakusin, diverting or intercepting the supply. So you can't mess with the soil, the sunlight, the winds as easily as you can the water. The water can be tampered with in all these ways, and the law must accordingly come to the rescue. So we shall meet the case by enacting as follows. If one man intentionally tampers with another supply, whether spring water or standing water, whether by way of drugging or of digging or of abstraction, I don't know what abstraction would be. I guess if you are siphoning their water away, but that's not really contaminating it, right? That would be, or if you take minerals out of it, I guess. You make you've been taking the minerals out of my water. The injured party shall put the amount of damage on record and proceed at law before the urban commissioners. A party convicted of putting poison, pharmakais, in the water shall, over and above the payment of the fine imposed, undertake the purification of the contaminated springs or reservoir in such a fashion as the canon law may direct this purification to be performed in the individual case. Okay, so we've got a lot to digest in these last 2 pages. So, we had this analogy. So we had this analogy for Socrates, and good.
No, I couldn't hear it for 5 or 10 seconds. I don't know if that was just my internet or your mic.
Oh, okay. I hope it was just you, but yeah, please let me know if it pops out again. But for you too, well, maybe it was my internet, or maybe both of you all failed at the same time. Who knows?
It was just fine. It was just the first 5 or 10 seconds where you started speaking. Just
Okay.
back in.
Okay. So have y'all seen the movie How to Learn to Stop Worrying and Love the Bomb?
I haven't even heard of it.
Okay. Not and love bomb, love the Learn to Stop Worrying. Worrying and Love the Bomb. Well, basically, in this, the end of the world is caused by a U.S. Army commander who believes that communists are poisoning our sperm. Yeah, Jack the Ripper, and he says, and he very, very famously, he's like, I'm not going to stand up for communist indoctrination, communist infiltration, communist control of our precious bodily fluids. And his password, his password to call back the nuclear strike that they try to figure out is POE, purity of essence. And so it's a Western metaphysical just concern from Plato up to the Cold War, up to now, up to any thinking of masculinity, up to any thinking of sperm, of any thinking of virility, and virility including any thinking of agriculture and fertility. Derrida's trying to contaminate all of these metaphors, so-called metaphors, and all of these words with the deconstruction of logocentrism that we've been developing to give it, he's giving it more, he's disseminating it. And the supervillain who causes he's not a supervillain, he's just, but the villain who causes this global apocalypse in this film, was worried about the Pharmakon in his purity of essence water. So just as we're moving through this, you don't have to feel like every gesture you get, but do we feel like we're getting, okay, we're trying to get this deconstruction of writing, this Pharmakon thing. Basically, Derrida's trying to poison the well, basically. He's trying to poison the well of Platonism, trying to get the Pharmakon plug into as many metaphoric nodes as he can. Okay. So anything jump out at people in what we've read before we go on, or anything we want to ask about or spend a little more time on?
Oh, I do have a bit of a question, but
Please.
I feel like it's a very beginner, like a very stupid question.
No, that's great. Those are the best ones.
So, like, if you scroll up a bit again, over here, where he talks about the entrance of Pharmakon on the scene, the evolution of the magic powers, comparison with painting, etc., etc. You know, how he says, all this could not, like. Okay, my main question is, I sense like a kind of comparison similar to Nietzsche's, like in terms of like Apollonian and Dionysian kind of stuff, and I kind of see that, especially when he says could it not lead us to games and festivals, and I think we're like kind of comparing these again.
Yeah, so totally. That's so. Don't let me run over you. Did you have a question or specifically, or do you want me to just respond to that thought?
You can respond first, and it'll be better, I think.
Okay. So we're developing. So just in general, it's fair to be like, I'm kind of pissed off, Derrida, that you never tell me what part of the text you're in at any time. I don't know if anybody else gets really, I don't know if I get annoyed because it's just like, dude, what do you mean? Okay, the entrance of the Pharmakon and the scene, the evolution of the magic powers, the comparison with the painting, so we're in the Phaedrus, right? Okay. But it's hard to, but he's saying the Pharmakon has a sort of, I think Dionysian is a totally apt analogy, a sort of, I think, remember when I was describing the Pharmakon as like a special sauce? It has like a special sauce plainness to the situation, and it gets Plato to start playing too, and gets us to this analogy. So we get to this analogy of, okay, let me get to the notes thing where, so Socrates analogy, right? What do we have? We have simulacrum writing, which is playwriting, Dionysian, and I'm just going to write outpouring of Sperm. Versus true writing. So this is writing that writing of truth in the soul of the knowledgeable one and careful one. So no holidays, no play. This is virile. This is like a father, serious like a father. Okay. I'm sorry the text is so small. Is it legible though? Is it?
No, it's legible.
Okay. I'll try to make it a little bigger at some point. But okay. Still working out all the kinks here. But like, so we haven't quite gotten to the payoff of this yet. But we have a clear opposition between different kinds of, so Socrates, in order to differentiate describe the differences between bad son, bad writing, and good son, good writing. We're using this agriculture analogy. Okay, that's all we know so far here. Okay, so I think the Apollonian Dionysian thing is a totally it maps on absolutely, even if Nietzsche's not explicitly mentioned.
I get the distinction now, right?
Okay.
I feel like that's the thing with most of the texts that like we've went through. I get these distinctions, but I feel like I'm missing a few details. You know, like when Derrida or when Socrates elaborates on these things. You know, like when I read him with his voice, and he went on a tangent about, you know, farmers and soil and, you know, waiting 8 months and stuff, and just like I feel like I'm missing stuff there that should be, you know, important, that should
Like right
indicate something. Yeah, that should indicate something more than just distinctions.
Yeah. So you're thinking there should be argumentative payoff here, that you feel like you're missing when we're just so I think that I would just hang tight. Derrida's kind of teasing you here, teasing all of us. I don't think there's too much argumentative payoff. It's kind of the same line that we've been having of that basically. So there's an interesting turn here that Derrida is emphasizing that I think is different. So I just said I think it's the same thing. Now rereading it, I actually think it's maybe not the same thing. Okay, so what's the logic of so what's the logic here that Socrates is demonstrating? Well, the logic is, okay, so if you had a sensible paternal agriculturalist sort of who knows how seeds work, and in this context we're talking about writing, right? Who knows how to have good stuff grow and also knows how to have bad stuff grow, wouldn't he just not take writing seriously? So, and are we to maintain? So because we've just gone through like, hey, doesn't a farmer know how to like plant stuff? I love how just basic Socrates argues can be so. Doesn't a farmer know how to plant stuff? Well, then doesn't somebody who knows about the just and the honorable and the good, isn't he going to see things just as well? Well, then when he writes in water, which is going to be all writing, like writing in sand, because you write in sand, right, and it just gets cleaned off, right? It's not stable. When the tide comes in, it cleans it off. Or in that black fluid we call ink, using his pen to sew words that either can't speak. So he's not going to do it with serious intent, Spude. So what is the payoff here? Well, we initially said, okay, we're going to get to play. We're going to get to outpouring of sperm with the entrance of the Pharmakon on the scene, right? Well, what Socrates basically gets to is, well, somebody who is wise isn't going to write seriously because they know that writing is not a serious thing. Because they're wise enough. So that is the turn argumentatively that I had missed, that I appreciate you asking, because going back over it, I don't think I would have quite got that. I don't know. Nona, do you agree with that sort of, does that?
Yeah, I think he also gets to that a little bit later on.
Okay.
It's not yet done, the whole arc, the argument, or whatever's going on.
Okay, well, if you're reading ahead, that's not really fair to us. But okay. Yeah, so the arc of the argument, yeah, okay, is not done. That's what I figured. We haven't gotten to so part of it, Riki, is I missed that thing, and also the other part of it is just he hasn't gotten to the like, all right, I'm down to clown and give you the payoff yet, right? He isn't there yet.
Yep.
Yeah,
I see.
Okay, so I was thinking the same thing, so I appreciate because I was like, we're okay with this distinction again. Okay. Oh, we're gonna get the trace in. Okay. Yeah, would I just would one of y'all want to read? Oh, and we're gonna get to, yeah, pederasty.
Yeah, I could read.
Oh, thank you.
Okay. Writing and speech have thus become two different species or values of the trace. One, writing, is a lost trace, a non-viable seed. Everything in sperm that overflows wastefully, a force wandering outside the domain of life, incapable of engendering anything, of picking itself up, of regenerating itself. On the opposite side, living speech makes its capital bear fruit, and does not divert its seminal potency toward indulgence in pleasures without paternity. In its seminary, it is in conformity with the law. In it there is still a marked unity between logos and nomos. What is the law in question? Here's how the Athenian states it. That was exactly my own meaning when I said I knew of a device for establishing this law of restricting procreative intercourse to its natural function by abstention in congress with our own sex, with its deliberate murder of the race and its wasting of the seed of life on a stony and rocky soil, where it will never take root and bear its natural fruit, and equal abstention from any female field where you would design or harvest. One supposes law perpetual and effective. Let it be, as it ought to be, no less effective in the remaining cases than it actually is against incest with parents. And the result will be untold good. It is dictated, to begin with, by nature's own voice, leads to the suppression of the mad frenzy of sex, as well as marriage breach of all kinds, and all manner of excess in meats and drinks, and wins men to affection of their wedded wives. There are also numerous other blessings which will follow, if one can only compass the establishment of such a law. Yet should some young and lusty bystander of exuberant virility overhears as we propose it, he might probably denounce our enactments as impracticable folly, and make the air ring with his clamor. Okay.
Yeah, okay, so just to clarify the law.
Go ahead.
Oh yeah, okay, go ahead.
No, I was just like, okay, there was something.
Yeah, right, yeah. The law is you can't have sex unless you're gonna have kids, right? That's the law.
Yeah.
Okay, just clarifying, so I don't. Okay, yeah.
One could cite here both the writing and the pederasty of a young man named Plato and his ambiguous relation to the paternal supplement. In order to make up for the father's death, he transgressed the law. He repeated the father's death. These two gestures contradict each other or cancel each other out. Whether it be a question of sperm or of writing, the transgression of the law is a priori subject to a law of transgression. Transgression is not thinkable within the terms of classical logic, but only within the graphics of the supplement of the Pharmakon. Of that Pharmakon which can equally well serve the seed of life and the seed of death, childbirth and abortion. Socrates was well aware of that. Here we have a Socrates section coming in.
Socrates section.
Moreover, with the drug, the pharmakia, and incantations they administer, midwives can either bring on the pains of labor or allay them at their will, make a difficult labor easy, and at an early stage cause a miscarriage if they so decide.
The Duncan, thank you.
Should I go on?
Yeah, please.
Okay. The scene becomes more complicated. While condemning writing as a lost or parricidal son, Plato behaves like a son writing this condemnation, at once repairing and confirming the death of Socrates. But in this scene where we have remarked the apparent absence of the mother, Socrates is not really the father either, only the surrogate father. This Khrushchev, the son of a midwife, this intercessor, this go-between, is neither a father, even though he takes the father's place, nor a son, even though he is the son's comrade or brother and obeys the eternal voice of God. Socrates is the supplementary relation between father and son. And when we say that Plato writes from out of the father's death, we are thinking not only of some event entitled the death of Socrates, which it is sad Plato did not attend, but primarily of the sterility of the Socratic seed left to its own devices. Socrates knows that he will never be a son, nor a father, nor a mother. The knowledge the go-between needs for matchmaking should have been the same as the knowledge the midwife needs for delivery. Consider the knowledge of that sort of plant or seed that should be sown in any given soil. Does it not go together with skill in tending and harvesting the fruits of the earth? If prostitution and transgression of the law had not kept them separate. If Socrates' art is still better than that of a matchmaker midwife, it is no doubt because his task is to distinguish between apparent false fruit and true living fruit. But for the essential, Socrates shares the lot of the midwife, sterility. I am so far like the midwife that I cannot myself give birth to wisdom. Heaven constrains me to serve as a midwife, but has debarred me from giving birth. And let us recall the ambiguity of the Socratic Pharmakon, both anxiogenic and tranquilizing. My art has power to bring on these pangs or to allay them. Should I go on still?
Yeah, if you want to. Yeah, please.
Yeah, I can. The seed must thus submit to logos. Oh, well, actually, I think there was some points, I think quite a bit already happened, maybe.
Okay, then let's stop.
Well, if you,
Lots of
I'm afraid I'm losing them if it really.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Then let's go slow. Okay. So, what are we? So, what's our thread here? What are we losing, or what do we want to follow in these 2.5 pages? Well, what's happened? We've got water. We've got this law about protecting our bodily fluids, and then we got this. We're distinguishing between good flowing, good liquid, good traces. So he says trace. How we get to trace. It's not clear to me immediately. But we're getting to, like, we can view even sperm. So, like, you might initially think, like, hey, sperm is on the side of speech, right? Speech, the father, presence, right? Engendering, insemination. And then sort of sperm's dispersion or onanism or whatever is on the side of writing and dispersion, etc. And that's the case. But what Derrida's really pushing here is, like, kind of, they're both, any of these oppositions are both of the same liquid, of the same, not substance, but of the same medium. And it's kind of how they are used, which defines how the Platonic structure is going to classify them. So, there is, so we've got this politics and logos nomos thing. What is other stuff that jumps out with people in these 2 or 3 pages? This crazy law. Okay, you never waste sperm. Basically, you always, you always use it to make babies.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask. So, like, he's basically proposing that, going back to the analogy that you brought with, and I'm sorry I keep coming back to analogies.
No. Analogies,
Well,
that's all we're talking about here is we're getting out. This is like Derrida's listing analogies. So please, yeah, go ahead.
Is what he's proposing in the law basically saying that, this may be random, but simulacrum writing should only be used in favor to create a new, or must I explain? Like, should simulacrum writing or the Sperm or, playwriting only be used in favor of something more authentic, to create something authentic?
So I think that's the way that's where the Platonic argument always has to go eventually. Like the Platonic argument always has to like stop the play at some point, at some eventuality, and get to reproduction, get to the father, get to virility, get to fertility. But we haven't gotten that movement here yet. I think, so why Derrida's bringing in law, he's trying to link it to questions of politics and link it to questions of writing, to questions of transgression. So transgression literally just disobeying the law and displacing it in the same gesture. So yeah, good.
Just a very quick question, because this is for me, so like it's all with the good writing, bad writing stuff, right? And I just wanted to know, like, so Plato transgresses the law, and this is just because he is writing his text, right? And so he is like not like just by talking to someone, like really sowing the seed, letting it nourish, etc., etc. But he's just putting it to text. Everyone can read it. Brings me back to this whole democratic thing, where this was his like big issue, right? That anyone can read it if they should read it. It's just completely like no control over that. And so this is like this wasting of the seed. It has no, you cannot really tend to it. This is how I read this whole thing.
I think that's totally the case. I think that's all right. I would just add to it that it's it's not just that he writes, right? And that he writes out of Socrates' death. We'll talk about what that out of Socrates, there's a lot obviously hanging in that formulation. What does it mean to write out of Socrates' death? But it's also that how he writes about Socrates and what he writes about Socrates. So it's just not just that he writes, but also that his position relative to Socrates is the position of a son trying to get the father to speak, the father who didn't write over and over again, right? And so this phrase right out of Socrates, so it's like, so it is literally that he writes. I mean, that is not irrelevant.
And that he, oh yeah, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Just that he becomes like is a spokesperson for Socrates, just like we had this, like Socrates is the spokesperson for his God who speaks to him, or
Yeah, exactly. So it's analogous to Socrates' spokesperson for God. And right, this is a significant thing, right? Because like this is always the criticism of writing, right? Writing speaks in the place of the other, right? It's you never get the other speaking directly, supposedly, with writing, right? Like the other can die and their writing is still legible to you. So it's writing functions even in the death of the, so it's just like versus supposedly speech, which, I mean, apparently the other person is right there. And so Plato's textual, so the aggregate of the dialogues, like Plato's textual relation is writing the death of the father as Socrates. Derrida's about to sort of fine tune this analysis a bit as a surrogate father, but it's so if we know, like, why is this transgressing the law? Well, if we know what we just said is, if we know what we just said, I've been really inviting Ed today into this. Okay, if we know what we just said is, if what we just said as different kinds of agriculture, right? Because the law, because we're talking about transgression relative to this law, right? That's why Derrida's bringing it up. So we could think about Plato transgressing generally, but here I think we want to think about Plato transgressing this law, and it's like, and it's thinking about in terms of the analogies that Riki's been drawing out of, like Plato is. So Socrates just said, what serious, knowledgeable, I can't spell knowledge, person would write, given what we know about how fertile writing is agriculture analogy, right? And yet, not only does Plato write, he writes only in a super writing-y way, in only staging the dead Socrates, right? So this is the transgression, right? So does that make sense? So
Yeah, that at the very end, that's when it clicked for me, really, actually.
okay, cool. Okay. So I'm back, but doesn't mean others have to be.
Yeah, I'm back as well, just waiting for some tea.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh, okay. Great. I'm excited because I think we figured this out way better than I had it on first reading. Yeah, but go ahead.
Yeah, I still had, I think, most of it, the section we just looked at, oh wait, which one was it? Oh, with the transgression. Yeah. It just, I don't know, I'm kind of like, some reason I can't say the top of my head, what are the two gestures that contradict each other, and so like the third sentence or something?
Yeah. Okay, the two. So let's see. So it's just that he's insofar as Socrates is, his signature is in part like Platonic metaphysics and this
Yeah.
foul destruction of writing, right? If you're killing to save, sort of like if you're trying to bring back the absent father and functioning as writing, and if the absent father's sort of signature is to be the anti-writing guy and the anti-writing Pharmakon guy, these two gestures, those are the two gestures as I read it here. You're
the writing and the pederasty.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So
Then I'm good.
yeah. So the pederasty, actually, I struggle a little bit to integrate, because to the two gestures, I think the two gestures is not the writing and the pederasty, actually. I think that.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So like my reading of this, so it's confusing, but it's so this and his ambiguous relation, I think, is two more things after this. So Derrida is, of course, pointing out, hey, you know, none of these guys were kept it in their pants quite like this, right? Derrida's, including Plato. Plato didn't he didn't keep it in his pen. He didn't keep it in his pants. He wrote in was pederasty. I thought that's not consistent with this. But then also there is this, and his ambiguous relation to the paternal supplement. So he's trying to save Socrates in order to make up for the father's death, right? He's repeating the father's death because he has to, because of who this father is, right? So like, because Socrates' signature is anti-writing, in order to bring him back, he has to kill him. I'm upset because I've got it, but I just don't know if I'm explaining it very well. But so.
Maybe
Yeah.
So with the writing and the pederasty, I understand the contradiction, right? This I do, and then with the part afterward, so if it doesn't refer to that, what's the I mean, maybe this is not super the most important thing, but
I don't know.
if it is,
Yeah.
I'd like to know. So I understand, like, with the writing and the pederasty, yeah, they cancel each other out. If you have writing, there's no pederasty, and the other way around. Like, at least the bad
terms,
writing.
Yeah, in these terms, yeah. So I think basically like I think that it's, I don't know, I'm going back and forth on whether literally. So I think that just my sense in which I want to get away from this is I think you could be totally right and I might be wrong here, but my sense is just this and his ambiguous. So this is like, one could cite here both the writing and the pederasty. That just feels like something we're setting to the side, right? The biological pederasty of a young man named Plato, right? Biologically, he did do pederasty. Although I don't know if we know that I'm sure that happened, but isn't it just like we know all these guys sort of did that? We don't really, do we really have the receipts for that? But anyway, but that's separate thing. But I just mean like, I think this like he transgressed the law. What law? The law against non-fertile production, which here is writing. So we don't have. So like he repeated, so to make up for father's death, right, to give pseudo presence of the father, right? To have all these Socratic dialogues spread them. And then, but that repeats the father's death. Not because, so here, I think it's this argument that I didn't even get before that I'm kind of just getting now as I say it. But like, it repeats the father's death by what? By staging the sterility of Socrates. He's pure midwife, right? He can only get to himself through the other. So when it says two gestures, I think the two gestures are repeat the father's death and make up for the father's death by transgressing the law. But it's really hard. I don't know. I might have to come back to it, and you could totally be right. Maybe I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I think we can. I think like, so in this, in order to make for the father's death, I mean, here in this kind of, it's already the two gestures are already present, right? And in making up for that, and also, and yeah, okay, the other one repeats the father's. Yeah, okay. No, I think, yeah, we can just come back to that at some other point. I think it's not, I think it's an interesting question.
Yeah, it's probably, it's worth coming back to it for sure. And I'll look at the French, and you could totally be right that it's pederasty in the writing thing. But yeah, I think it's like, when I think that, I guess we move on for now. Other questions about this, or can we read some more? I don't want to rush us. I'm just drinking Red Bulls, so that's where I'm at. Yeah. Other thoughts?
I think those were my questions. Like I had it underlined also in my notes. And with my say we could move on.
Okay. I think this is hilarious, by the way, this law. I didn't know this was in the laws. I totally forget. Yeah. Riki, sorry.
I just said, yeah, I think we can run along.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. So I guess I'll read a bit. The seed must thus submit to logos. What a sentence, Derrida. And so doing, it must do violence to itself, since the natural tendency of sperm is opposed to the law of logos. What? If you would think one thing would be pro logos, it would be sperm, right? Okay, it's going to be opposed? Okay, I would have thought if you had been like, give me 5 logos things, sperm would have been like, if it was like Family Feud style, I would have put sperm right at the top. Okay. The natural tendency of sperm is opposed to the law of logos. We're going to get like a dialectic sort of craziness here. Or we're going to generate an image. God, kill me. Of sperm. Okay. The seed, and in so doing, it must do bound to itself, since the natural tendency of sperm is opposed to the law of logos. The marrow we have named semen, and the semen, having life and becoming endowed with respiration. I need to look this up. Fact check. Does semen breathe? Produces in that part in which it respires. I didn't even know you could say that in English. A lively desire of emission, and thus creates in us the love of procreation. Doesn't it? Doesn't sperm just make you want to procreate? Wherefore, also in men, the organ of generation becoming rebellious and masterful, like an animal disobedient to reason, and man with the sting of lust, seeks to gain absolute sway. Okay, so we dip into the Timaeus here to say semen gets too excited. So it's sort of always in Plato, you have this like dialectic between mastery and being mastered. Of everything that gets you excited or gets you going always risks getting out of control. Play always risks getting out of control. Semen always risks just going everywhere instead of going where you want it to go, which is to fertile lands to make babies. One must here take care. At the moment, Plato seems to be raising writing up by turning live speech into a sort of psychic graphe. He maintained this movement within a problematic of truth. Writing in te psyche, in the mind, in the soul, is not path-breaking writing, but only a writing of transmission, of education, of demonstration, or at best, of discovering. So he's alluding to the Heidegger reading of Aletheia, a writing of Aletheia. Its order is didactic, maieutic, or at any rate, elocutionary, dialectical. This type of writing must be capable of sustaining itself in living dialogue, capable most of all of properly teaching the true as it is already constituted. So this is still, when Plato, even when Plato's talking about writing on the soul or of, we're still talking about writing, strictly speaking, as effective pedagogy, right, of truth that we already have. Gesundheit. Okay, this authority of truth, of dialectics, of seriousness, of presence, will not be gainsaid at the close of this admirable movement. When Plato, gainsaid means like contradicted, if you're not fluent in 15th century English, after having in a sense reappropriated writing, pushes his irony and his seriousness to the point of rehabilitating a certain form of play. So we almost got to play here, but we're gonna get really close to it, but pull back, right? Compared with other pastimes, playful hypomnesic writing, second-rate writing, is preferable, should go ahead of the other brothers for their even worse seeds in the family. Hence, the dialectician will sometimes write, amass monuments, collect hypomnemata, just for fun. But he will do so while still putting his products at the service of dialectics, and in order to leave a trace. We're going to get trace. We're going to get the trace word for whomever, not whoever, for whomever might want to follow in his footsteps on the pathway to truth. The dividing line now runs less between presence and the trace than between the dialectical trace and the non-dialectical trace, between play in the good sense and play in the bad sense of the word. Okay, I can be Phaedrus here and Riki, you're on.
Okay. They will sow a seed in literary gardens, I take it, and write when he does write by way of pastime, collecting a store of reminders, both for his own memory, against the day when age oblivious comes, and for all such as tread in his footsteps, and he will take pleasure in watching the tender plants grow up. And when other men resort to other pastimes, regaling themselves with drinking parties and such like, he will doubtless prefer to indulge in the recreation I refer to.
Never read an X on what it is, Socrates. How far superior to the other sort is the recreation that a man finds in words when he discourses about justice and the other topics that you speak of.
Yes, indeed, dear Phaedrus, but far more excellent, I think, is the serious treatment of them, which employs the art of dialectic. The dialectician selects a soul of the right type, and in it he plants and sows his words founded on knowledge, words which can defend both themselves and him who planted them, words which instead of remaining barren contain a seed whence new words grow up in new characters, whereby the seed is vouchsafed immortality, and its possessor the fullest measure of blessedness that man can attain unto.
Beautiful, beautiful. I mean, can you imagine Derrida jumping up his chair when Socrates in this sequence said trace? Like, I think there was an explosion of sperm at that moment. Okay. Like, he's just, Derrida loves trace stuff, and you don't see the word trace, and but he said, but hey, and it came up in his thing, you know? Okay, so any thoughts about, I don't want to say this is clear, but it is a bit, it feels a bit clearer than what we've gotten up to this point, but I don't know, thoughts, questions on these 2 pages?
I have one question, but it's a small one.
Sure.
It's just with one specific word that is used. Wait, let me path-breaking writing. So the word path-breaking, I just back today. I read the first few pages of the Scene of Writing, I think.
Yeah.
And I think he gets into exactly also, I think that what path breaking also comes up. And I just wanted to know, like, if you remember, like, what the point, because I haven't gotten far into the book.
So it's I think it's Bonham, I think, or something, and the Freud, but it's translated usually as breaching in that essay. But basically, Freud, when he's thinking in this project for a scientific psychology, which is really interesting, I think pretty early Freud essay, where Freud is trying to totally rationally think basically the electricity almost of the mind and the soul. And he is, when he's thinking about breaching he has to think of the mind as a substrate, basically that can be recorded onto as a writing pad, and he has to use this. So breaching is when you receive, and again, I haven't read that essay in 10 years. Okay. So this is not as complex or as nuanced as probably it would be if I went back and looked at it. But just to give you the bumper sticker that has breached into my memory, it is that you receive it. So if you're thinking of the psyche, a lot of times you could think of just a sensation as being data you read. Sort of like you could have a model where you're okay, I'm reading blue, that's blue. It doesn't penetrate me and leave a imprint, right? It doesn't write into me in that model. Freud finds himself needing to rely on this Bonung, on this breaching, on this path breaking sort of way of thinking, traces on the mind and writing on the mind, that Derrida picks up on and wants to think in terms of writing, in terms of difference. Here, this distinction is so basically because when I'm receiving a stimulus in this breaching model, I am being produced. What is reading the mark on my mind or on my brain fold, if you will, is also being produced by the mark that is marking, right? So it's not as if I'm receiving. So it's not just that I'm not receiving a package of meaning and just being okay, well, that's blue. It's that I'm being bluified and I read the blue and I am remade in blue style by the breaching thing. Path breaking means I am reformed, and part of me receiving the sensation or reading the sensation is me being breached and being reformed by the sensation. It's not a simple, already constituted didactic thing where there is a content that I receive. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. So it's a difference between a reception that constitutes you and that part of the reading is that constituting, and a reception that is already known. So and remakes itself, right? It's a difference between basically the event of reception, which would events of breaching, events of penetration, path breaking. So changing the substrate, and so your brain folds, and that which is received content. Okay. But I haven't read the Freud essay in a long time, but that's the distinction here, and I think does map onto it. Okay, any other thoughts before we move on? Or if you feel oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Sorry.
Okay. Yeah. They don't even put the translate. It's so mean to not put the translation, but I think this is sister. It's like they teaches the serious sister, something like this. I'll have to look it up, but we don't have to worry about these. Okay. Okay, we're finally gonna get to play. Okay. We're gonna get to play. It's playtime, finally. Okay. This has got to be a sister thing. I don't know. Okay. 9, play from the Pharmakon to the letter and from blindness to the supplement. It's going to be really hard to reconstruct. I can already feel this is not going to be only play. Okay. It has been thought that Plato simply condemned play. And by the same token, the art of mimesis, which is only a type of play. But in all questions involving play and its opposite, the logic will necessarily be baffling. Play and art are lost by Plato as he saves them, and his logos is then subject to that untold constraint that can no longer even be called logic. Plato does very well speak of play. He speaks in praise of it. But he praises play in the best sense of the word, if this can be said without eliminating play beneath the reassuring silliness of such a precaution. The best sense of play is play that is supervised and contained within the safeguards of ethics and politics. This is play comprehended under the innocent, innocuous category of fun. Amusement, however far off it may be, the common translation of paideia by pastime, divertissement, no doubt only helps consolidate the Platonic repression of play. Okay, so Derrida's a gamer, remember, and he wants to play hard. Okay, so the Platonic repression of writing is also going to be the Platonic repression of play. Okay. So spude means serious, remember? Just so that's clear. So the opposition spude paideia will never be one of simple symmetry. Either play is nothing, and that is its only chance. We'll want to talk about that. Either it can give place to no activity, to no discourse worthy of the name, that is, one charged with truth or at least with meaning, and that it is a logos or a topos. Or else, play begins to be something, and its very present lays it open to some sort of dialectical confiscation. It takes on meaning and works in the service of seriousness, truth, and ontology. Only logoi peri onton, so logoi towards being, on something that is, can be taken seriously. As soon as it comes into being and into language, play erases itself as such. These are giant claims we're going to want to walk through. Just as writing must erase itself as such before truth, etc. What an etc. The point is that there is no as such where writing or play are concerned. Having no essence, introducing difference as the condition for the presence of essence, opening up the possibility of the double, the copy, the imitation, the simulacrum, the game, and the graphe are constantly disappearing as they go along. They cannot, in classical affirmation, be affirmed without being negated. So, questions about this. So this is another case where we want to get what Derrida is saying formally, more than we want to be able to quite demonstrate it yet. But any questions or thoughts about this strong set of claims.
Mm, I think formally it's okay. I think there's a lot happening here, but just what he's saying, I think I can follow.
How do you feel about it, Riki? Is it just like English, or is it just insane?
No, I've been comprehending it very well, and I've also been kind of like being able to make sense of it, like in a demonstratively way, because for like the past like 10-15 minutes we've been reading this, I've been relating it to art and music as well, which I don't think I'm quite ready to share yet.
No, that's okay.
But I understand very well, and I think this resonates a lot more with me.
Okay, fantastic. Well, yeah, just checking in. Yeah, no, you don't have to share it. It's all good. Not a police investigation, but I'm interested to hear at some point for sure.
Yeah.
Maybe one quick thing, just so about this, and that is it's only chance. So as soon as play is not about nothing, I mean he goes into that, but it brings some. It has to be taken seriously in some capacity, insofar as it is something. This is like very, very badly put, but
no, sure.
But yeah, this is kind of like I guess what's happening here too.
Could you restate? I think I got the outlines of what you're saying, but could you say your concern or question or thought again?
Not super well. I mean, I guess it kind of just bleeds into what he says, just that it bleeds, or that it is then open to some sort of dialectical confiscation, right? As soon as it is about, or as it is something, it can be dialecticized or whatever the word is, and is captured. Then there's some, you have to take it seriously, etc., etc. And
yeah. So it's a special sauce that the moment it starts applying to stuff and you start thinking about it, oh, it is a sauce. Well, then you get the father, then you get presence, then you get seriousness, you get because like, I mean, one way to think of it is like Platonism would not need to be trying this hard to repress writing and play if play and writing could sort of survive easily in the metaphysics of Platonism. They can't, right? It's just there's a profound violence and decision at the heart of Platonism against play. But that is its only chance is like, I think I unconsciously reproduced that in an article recently. So it's like, if you want to give play a chance, you have to clear away any philosophical attempt to dialectically defend it, basically. If you defend play in the world of logos, in the world of philosophy, you lose it, inevitably. And so taking play seriously can never be straightforwardly serious. Is be another. We'll have a million different ways to say this, I think. Okay. Plato thus plays at taking play seriously. That is what we earlier called the stunning hand Plato has dealt himself. Specific recall worth tracking later on. Not only are his writings defined as games. Oh, that happens multiple times. That's interesting. But human affairs in general do not, in his eyes, need to be taken seriously. That's so awesome. I forgot about that. Human affairs. That's so... I don't know why that tickles me. Okay. One thinks of the famous passage in the Laws. Of course, I don't know this passage. I'm excited to read it with you all. Let us reread it despite its familiarity, so as to follow the theological assumption of play into games. So when I say Derrida's a gamer, that's not assuming this distinction of play versus games, okay? Derrida's not a gamer in that way, okay? So it's not perfectly rigorous for me to keep saying Derrida's a gamer in view of this distinction, okay? All right. To be sure, man's life is a business which does not deserve to be taken too seriously. Of course. Yet we cannot help being earnest with it, and there's the pity. Still, as we are here in this world, no doubt, for us the becoming thing is to show this earnestness in a suitable way. I mean, we should keep out seriousness for serious things, and not waste it on trifles. And that, while God is the real goal of all beneficent, serious endeavor, Macarius Spudes, the Spudes non-stop break, man, as we have said before, has been constructed as a toy for God. So, paideia word, paignion, and toy. And this is, in fact, the finest thing about him. All of us then, men and women alike, must fall in with our role and spend life in making our play as perfect as possible, to the complete inversion of current theory. Sort of speaks to the Dionysian thing. Okay. It is the current fancy that our serious work should be done for the sake of play, our play, unless it is held that war is serious work, which ought to be well discharged for the sake of peace. But the truth is that a war we do not find, and we shall never find, either any real play or any real education worth the name. It's anti-Hegelian position. And these are the things I count supremely serious for such creatures as ourselves. Hence it is peace in which each of us should spend most of his life and spend it best. I really prefer this to Hegel. I know that we're arguing against this here as Derrida, but I've been working on Hegel lately, and just Hegel is so just like infuriatingly bellicose and martial that just reading this is just like, yes, thank you. Okay. Hence it is peace in which he is like, war is the form in which Geist creates its meaning, sort of. Hegel says stuff like this all the time. Hence it is peace in which each of us should spend most of his life and spend it best. What then is our right course? We should pass our lives in the playing of games, certain games, that is, sacrifice, song, and dance, with the result of ability to gain heaven's grace and to repel and vanquish an enemy when we have to fight him. Play is always lost when it seeks salvation in games. So this is an anti-League of Legends position. We have examined elsewhere in Rousseau's era this disappearance of play into games. This non-logic of play and of writing enable us to understand what has always been considered so baffling. Why Plato, while subordinating or condemning writing and play, should have written so much, presenting his writings from out of Socrates' deaths as games, indicting writing and writing, lodging against it that complaint whose reverberations even today have not ceased to resound. Okay, we're going to get to a game, a real, okay, so I was about to say a real gamer moment here. We're going to get to a really juicy list. Okay, any thoughts or questions so far in this sequence? This is an amazing paragraph. I didn't know this. I can see why it's so famous. But Derrida doesn't like it here. So why don't we like it? What's wrong with this? This sounds great. Says progressive neutralization of the singularity of play. Theological assumption of play into games. Okay, so it has to do with God, right?
So yeah.
Good.
Yeah, that in the end, it says like with the games that it's for gaining heaven's grace, right? So it's subordinated to this kind of movement, to gaining this grace, and so play is lost here.
Yeah, and we're made as a toy for God, and so it's like, so our in essence because our play, because it's predestined to, is like also domesticated like a kid in a house, right? We can play, but in only our play area, which is our whole lives. Okay, that's fine. All right. Does somebody okay, this is like a really cool sequence. And then another really cool. I feel like I don't know how y'all feel about the text at this point, but it's like this is like some of the coolest shit. Okay. Would somebody mind reading here for us?
I got
Okay, thank you.
what law governs its contradiction, this opposition to itself, of what is said against writing, of a dictum that pronounces itself against itself as soon as it finds its way into writing, as soon as it writes down its self-identity and carries away what is proper to it against this ground of writing. This contradiction, which is nothing other than the relation to self of the diction, as it opposes itself to scription, as it chases itself in hunting down what is properly its trap. This contradiction is not contingent. In order to convince ourselves of this, it would already suffice to note that what seems to inaugurate itself in Western literature with Plato will not fail to re-edit itself, at least in Rousseau, and then in Sierra. In these three cases, in these three eras of the repetition of Platonism, which give us a new thread to follow and other notes to recognize in the history of philosophia or the episteme, the exclusion and the devaluation of writing must somehow, in their very affirmation, find the terms with 1. A generalized sort of writing, and along with it, through a contradiction, the written purpose of logocentrism, the simultaneous affirmation of the being outside of the outside, and of its injurious intrusion into the inside. 3. The construction of a literary work. Before Saussure's diagrams, there were Rousseau's and Plato's words, outside and independent of its logocentric content, which is then only one of its inscribed functions, can be read in its anagrammatical texture. Thus it is that the linguistics elaborated by Plato, Rousseau, and Saussure must both put writing out of the question and yet nevertheless borrow from it, for fundamental reasons, all its demonstrative and theoretical resources. As far as the Genevans are concerned, we have tried to show this elsewhere. The case is at least equally clear for Plato. Plato often uses the example of letters of the alphabet in order to come to grips with a problem. They give him a better grip on things. That is, he can use them to explain dialectics, but he never comes to grips with the writing he uses. His intentions are always apparently didactic and analogical, but they conform to a constant necessity, which is never thematized as such. What always makes it apparent is the love of the difference, the irreducibility, of structure and relation, of proportionality within analogy. We noted earlier that the tuples can designate with equal pertinence the graphic unit and the identity model. In the Republic, even before he uses the word tupos in the sense of model form idols, Plato finds it necessary to turn to the example of the letter, still for a pedagogical analysis, as a model that must be known before one can recognize its copies or icons reflected in water or in a mirror. It is then, said I, as it was when we learned our letters and felt that we knew them sufficiently
only when the separate letters did not elude us, appearing as a few elements in all the combinations that convey them, and when we did not disregard them in small things or great and think it unnecessary to recognize them, but were eager to distinguish them everywhere, in the belief that we should never be literate and letter perfect till we can do this. And is it not also true that if there are any likeness of letters reflected in water or mirrors, we shall never know them until we know the originals, but such knowledge belongs to the same art and discipline? We have no doubt already been warned by Timaeus. In all these comparisons with writing, we are not supposed to take the letters literally. The stoichia two principles, the elements or letters of the whole, are not assembled like syllables. They cannot reasonably be compared by a man of any sense even to syllables. And yet,
Oh, I lost you. Are you?
of course, God's calculation being able to express itself in the silence of numbers, but in addition, the introduction of the discordant and the blended. The problematic of the moving cause and the place, the third irreducible class, the duality of paradigms, all these things require that we define the origin of the world as a trace. That is a receptacle. It is a matrix, womb, or receptacle that is never and nowhere offered up in the form of presence, or in the presence of form, since both of these already presuppose an inscription within the mother. Here, in any case, the turns of phrase that are somewhat upwardly called Plato's metaphors are exclusively and irreducibly scriptural. The last, for example, point to a sign of this outwardness in a certain preface to the Timaeus. In order to conceive of place, one must always, through a process of abstraction that is almost unrealizable in practice, separate or detach an object from the place it occupies. This abstraction, however difficult, is nevertheless imposed upon us by the very fact of change, since two different objects cannot coexist in the same place, and since, without changing place, a same object can become other. Then we find ourselves unable to represent place itself except by metaphors. Plato used several quite different ones, which have greatly confused the modern readers. The place, the locus, that in which things appear, that upon which they manifest themselves, the receptacle, the matrix, the mother, the nerves, all these expressions make us think of space, which contains things. But later on, it is a question of the impression bearer, the formless space, the completely inodorous substance on which the perfume maker can fix the scent, the soft gold on which the jeweler can impress many diverse figures.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. This is a lot to
Yeah.
But this is great. So he's getting into like the Cora riff. Cora is a big Derrida, but it's like it's really cool. I have a little. I gave a talk that like I don't know, like 6 or 7 years ago, but it's like that I can link if people are interested in Cora stuff. But basically, like up to the Cora stuff, I think Derrida is getting this really, I think just this really strong macro argument of, hey, look, I'm reading Plato, I'm reading Saussure, I'm reading Rousseau, and this same thing keeps happening with writing over and over again. It's totally wild. And there's, I don't know, do people see it's the thousands of years of continuity of Western metaphysics? It's always been striking for me reading Derrida. I really find that it's quite persuasive. But I don't know, what did people think of this section? We'll probably have to stop soon just to respect people's time. But just any thoughts or questions or reactions before we break, I guess.
Hmm, nothing immediate. Maybe we could come back to this also next time.
I think this
Just
is yeah. Sorry, but
no. It's all good.
yeah, I think this is a high point to come back to argumentatively. I don't know if people
Hmm.
see that. Yeah. So okay. Cool. Yeah. Thanks so much, guys. Really felt like I really felt like I learned a lot today, so I really appreciate it. Going through this. Yeah. Do you guys realize how close we are to finishing this text? Like, I can't even look at this. Look at this number. This is the.
It's by something.
Oh, it's gonna be. I think I have to. I think there's like another page actually, but still, almost done. Okay. All right. All right.
And then
Oh, good.
yeah, then the next. What was it? No apocalypse. Not now, right?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
the
Yeah. Well, yeah.
yeah.
We'll have a really short text next that's just about nuclear weapons and Reagan. So it's really fun actually, and really good. And it's like basically it only has like one paragraph we need to. I mean, it's all worth close reading, of course, but I'm just like it's kind of just like I'm obsessed with just like 4 sentences in it that I would want to look at. Basically, where Derrida defines the absolute trace and basically destroys the conditions of possibility of deconstruction by thinking the absolute trace, a trace that would be more tracy than any other trace, which sort of by definition you aren't supposed to be able to have in deconstruction land. So it's a text that I think is heterogeneous to Derrida's corpus generally. Okay, cool. Thanks so much, y'all. See you next week.
Bye bye.
Bye.